Most Americans experience the oil industry in two places: at the gas pump, where prices often rise because of speculation, not just supply and demand, and also through TV advertising that paints this very profitable business in the most positive of terms.
I'm still here, and so is BP. We're committed to the Gulf for everyone who loves it and everyone who calls it home.
That's good for our country's energy security and our economy.
Which brings us to another set of corporations, the media companies. Jeff Cohn has been in the media and written books about its impact in shaping how Americans think about their country and its system of power. He says media companies push propaganda for war.
It's the same exact media quoting the same exact experts that pushed our country and the world into a war with Iraq. And we were told by these media, oh, we're so sorry, we didn't know, we made a mistake, next time we'll be more vigilant. But here we are next time, 10 years later, and the same media are blowing smoke about a weapons program in Iran that doesn't exist. There was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq either. And so we're hearing, it's like, when the war drums are beating. And I worked in mainstream television news in this country during the run-up to the Iraq War. When the war drums are beating, they don't let you put on opposing views. We tried to get opposing views that question the evidence, the intelligence that would justify an attack on Iraq, but we were kicked off the air. And now you're finding it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare that's happening again.
At the same time, Jeff, most people who work in major media, and I of course did as well, don't believe this. They don't buy this. They feel like they do have the freedom to cover issues and that the networks are much more diverse in their point of view than outsiders like you and maybe now me would say.
Well, the way to rebut that fiction is just to look at what happened in the wake of the Iraq invasion. Those of us who questioned the evidence that they were a weapons of mass destruction threat, we were totally right, and most of us got kicked out of the TV networks. The people who got it wrong have promoted up. So this idea of diversity in the mainstream media or good journalism will win out certainly hasn't been proven in the last 10 years, where the journalists who got it right have been punished, sanctioned, or kicked out of the media. And the journalists who got it wrong, most of them have more power today to blow smoke at Iran than they had even when they were blowing smoke at Iraq.
Those people, the people who own institutions, are usually very conscious of their power, not just as individuals, but as part of a dominant class, says independent TV producer Brian Drolet.
So there's a lot of talk here about Democrats and Republicans. Should we vote for the Democrats? Should we vote for the Republicans? There's a lot of talk about, the rich versus the 99%. But it's kind of, there's a certain kind of amnesia about the structure of our society that at one point in this country at least had some currency. In the 30s and even in the 60s, you could talk about the working class. Nobody talks about the working class. It's all about there's a middle class and then there's the 1%. As if there's no, and I guess then there's some, poor blacks and Latinos or something, right? And I think that that word has been sanitized and scrubbed out of the vocabulary of the people of the United States, including out of the vocabulary of the left. Now, that's not the entire left, but even the people that use the word class don't seem to have the ability to phrase it in a way that actually means something to people.
To talk about class is not to talk about a conspiracy, but a complex system that's evolved over the years, a system that is stratified and uses campaign contributions and lobbying to ensure that the politicians do the bidding of the companies. So these are the building blocks of the analysis we'll explore in this series on Who Rules America. The argument is simple but hard for many Americans to comprehend because many of us want to believe the myths we learned in school that make us feel superior to other countries and other peoples. This has been called American exceptionalism. Many in America believe that God created this country as the greatest country on earth, and that's what makes it so special.
So you really have to start with that as a basis for how the United States was founded.
Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz is one leader of America's indigenous people, the first Americans.
They were the ones to be eliminated because it was their land that was wanted, not even their labor. Like in Latin America, the indigenous people were enslaved and made into peasants, peons. But in North America, the Anglo-colonialism in Canada, U.S., New Zealand, and Australia had the motive of simply wiping them out and taking their land. So it's not just that they weren't included, they were to be eliminated.
And so questions about the custodians of real power and who rules America lead back to debates on how to remake power, how to challenge its distribution, and make it more transparent and accountable. These are the issues that the Occupy Wall Street movement is raising as it challenges institutional power in an attempt to revive grassroots democracy. David DeGraw explains Occupy's origins.
I mean, it was like such a confluence of events. You know, everything was moving in this direction. You know, I was looking at around the world. You know, there was protests happening in Egypt, and then it moved to, you know, the Arab Spring, Tunisia, and all throughout Europe. It came back, and it was just a matter of time before it hit the United States. And really, if you look, the occupations globally, you know, they became like the thing to do. So it was just a natural progression for it to show up here. I feel like it shows up here because, you know, even though wealth is so concentrated, you know, the people have a media system where they're so propagandized and they feel isolated. But, you know, Occupy shows that people are, you know, not suffering alone. They're coming out and raising awareness, and we changed the national discourse.
The movement is up against powerful forces with large budgets and the backing of police forces and the political establishment. While these activists are on the front lines of the fight for a people-ruled America, many of its people share the same hope. Do you have a sense of class being important in this country, that there being like an upper class or working class?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I'm a waitress at a very nice restaurant, and it's very clear to me, you know, what my role is and who I am, you know, and you can tell just from the dialogue that I have with people, you know. Recently, I talked to a general manager of a fairly large business in our town, and you know, when I mentioned that I was going to a public school, you know, I got kind of an eye roll, and oh yeah, my tax dollars pay for that, you know, and it's.
So you feel like there's all this resentment against working people, kind of feeling like they don't deserve what little they're getting?
Absolutely, and especially, you know, with the recent attacks on public sector employees, like on teachers, and you know, people are saying, you know, they don't deserve those benefits. We all don't get those benefits, so they don't deserve them either, you know. Or like, why isn't the conversation, maybe we should all work to get those for everyone instead of taking it away from the few that do have them.
You know, when I hear you talking, you know, I realize there's such a bigger picture here than most people even understand. That we have, you know, a country where the dream is slipping away for so many people, and they don't feel particularly powerful. They don't feel like they can do anything. They can achieve anything. They can make a difference.
Right. Well, I think the dream is shifted to hopefully I wake up tomorrow and I'll be able to pay my rent and keep a roof over my head, you know, or it's just like, you know, I'll work on achieving my dream tomorrow, but today, you know, I have to go to class, you know, and I have to get my work done. I have to go to work, and I have to try to squeeze a couple hours of sleep in, and then, you know, and it's...
Now you're here at this conference with all these brilliant theoreticians and analysts and professors and experts and leaders. And how do you feel about this idea that people have to get together to make a difference?
I think it's wonderful. I feel so blessed to be able to be here with people like that, because I want to learn. You know, somebody had said to me, well, why don't you leave where you are? And I don't think that's the answer. I think that it's my job as somebody who cares about these things to learn from these people, to learn from these brilliant minds, and so I can take this back to people and show them and explain to them where we don't have access to this kind of thing every day, you know, and so hopefully try to enlighten them a little bit.
Erin expresses the hopes of many ordinary Americans who want to reshape the nature of power so that the 99%, not just the 1%, can rule. But as you can see and hear, it's not a battle she feels she is winning. Perhaps that's why she, like many, want to know who rules America. Coming up in the next episode of Who Rules America, how the history of conflict between the 99% and the 1% goes back to the American Revolution.
The degree of inequality. Never before has the very, very top, the 1%, had so much of the national income and wealth in its own hands.
Next time on Who Rules America.